Hi, everyone, and welcome to our LinkedIn Live today. I am so excited to be with the amazing Jen Benz today, who happens to be one of the top 100 HR tech influencers. Congratulations on that, Jen.
Thank you. Thank you.
She's also the lead communications practice at Segal Benz, which is a benefits provider, and she oversees 70 people, which manages 70 people, which I think is amazing. And they work in the area of HR, employee benefits, and well-being communications. So, Jen, it is so nice to have you. And I know that you're in San Francisco right now.
I am. And thanks for having me, Laura. I'm delighted to be with you.
It's so great to have you. So for our guests that are coming in, if you want to go ahead and pop in the chat, just as AJ has put in there, where are you coming from? And welcome to everyone. So our topic today is we're going to be talking about this idea of creatures of culture. And for so long, the saying has been that we are so-called creatures of habit. And Jen and I are going to tackle that head on to really talk about how we might, in fact, be more creatures of culture. So before we dive more into that, Jen, can you take a moment to share with all of us a little bit more about your background?
Sure. So I, like many people, fell into the benefits and HR space a little bit accidentally, stumbled into it right after college, and I've spent my whole career doing employee and benefits communication. So we've worked with all sorts of different organizations, lots of name brand, big companies. We work with big universities and public sector entities and so forth. And the theme throughout all of that is getting people to actually understand and use all the programs that are out there from their employer, from their benefit provider. And I love this work. I think it's the best part of marketing communication you could possibly be in. And it's been really fun over the last 20 plus years.
And Jen, I just have to say, an expression that I often use, borrowing from the Field of Dreams, is if you build it as in a wellness program or any other kind of offering, they, as in the people that you're trying to reach, they will not necessarily come.
No.
So the work that you do is so important. If you want to speak to that briefly.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean I think that goes true for anything in the HR space, just like it does for anything in the consumer space. Just because something cool and useful is out there doesn't mean people will use it. And you have to promote it, make it relevant for people, and then tell them over and over and over again. And I tell our clients, if they are really, really bored and they're tired of hearing their benefits messages, they probably have just started to reach their target audience. So it takes a lot to get people to actually use all of this stuff that's out there.
Oh, that's fascinating. So we got lots of people coming in here. Happy to see Peter, my good friend Peter, coming in from Geneva. We've got Patty. Patty, it's so nice to see you coming in from Detroit. Paul coming in from Richmond, Virginia. We've got somebody coming in from Auburn, another San Franciscan, and somebody coming in, Anna coming in from Virginia. So welcome, everybody. And for those of you who are just joining, again, feel free to fill in the chat where you're coming from, and also any questions that you have for Jen as we proceed through this, and we'll stop along the way to answer those questions. So, Jen, since our topic today is about this idea of creatures of culture, and just to kind of tee that up, the story that I often use is this: these two fish who are swimming in the water. Another fish encounters them. The other fish asks, "How's the water?" And the two say, "What the hell is water?"
Yeah.
Meaning that these two fish don't even see the water that they are swimming in, and yet arguably that water that they're swimming in, aka the culture that we're all swimming in, shapes our behaviors in ways that we might not ever imagine. So high level, just give us some of your thoughts around this idea of creatures of culture, perhaps in lieu of creatures of habit.
Yeah. Well, I just don't think you can separate the two. You can't take people out of their culture and you can't take them out of their environment. And those are huge, huge factors when it comes to building any habits. And, all of the things that you have access to and how hard it is for you to do the things that you want to do. I live in San Francisco, as we mentioned before. It's a much different place to try to be healthy than where my sister lives in rural Wisconsin. And rural Wisconsin is an amazing place and has a lot of advantages over San Francisco. but things like access to organic produce, a plethora of well-being and health practitioners, and being able to exercise outdoors year-round. Those are not all as easy. So I just think you can't separate that. And as we know, our culture is so complex in so many ways that it helps and hinders people.
Yeah, an expression that we often hear, and I'm sure you all talk about this a lot, Jen, is this idea of obesogenic environments, where the environment itself generates obesity.
Mm-hmm.
So to your point, we really cannot separate the two. And so we know that in the work that we do, that our coveted outcome is behavior change. This is the magic word. And so much of that is predicated by behavioral science. And so if you're a behavioral scientist, then you are seen as being the go-to person around how do we get people to close the knowing and doing gap. Everybody knows that they should eat more vegetables, get more exercise, meditate more, not smoke, all these things, drink less wine. And yet people have a really hard time doing that. I mean, we know that less than 3% of Americans do those three basic things of eat healthy, get active, don't smoke. So I often think about Michael Marmot, a scientist who framed it up as it is, kind of to your point around the environment, that it is unreasonable to expect people to change when the social, political, physical environments around them literally conspire against them making a healthy choice, aka people being in these obesogenic environments. So give us your thoughts on that.
Yeah, well, I think it's a great topic, and I think it's one that we haven't spent enough time on in the well-being and benefits side of on the employer side, because I think we've put a lot of energy into crafting the internal employer environment, or what are the messages and what are the systems and what is the user experience that's going to make it easier for people to take advantage of well-being programs that are out there. But we don't spend enough time looking at the environment that they're in and the culture that they're in. And tell a quick story. We were working with a client many, many years ago who put in a results-based wellness program when they were very in vogue. Do all of these things and get into the healthy ranges, and you're going to get big incentives for your healthcare benefits. Well, it's not hard to get 90 or 95% participation when there's $1,000 on the line. Wow. So they had this program in place for many years, and they were seeing zero impact on people's actual health outcomes. No one was getting healthier, but everybody was participating in the well-being program. So what's going on there? We went and talked to their employees who were in largely rural areas in New Mexico and Oklahoma. And what we heard was, I work a 12-hour shift. How am I going to exercise on top of that? I have 10 minutes to eat lunch during the day. I can't eat a salad in 10 minutes. And then, my manager is a total jerk, and he won't even let me take a 5-minute break during the day. How am I going to do that? And then I'm working 2 jobs, all of these things. My favorite was that Betty, who makes the pie in the cafeteria, has been here for 20 years, and I have to eat her pie every day because otherwise I'm going to be disappointed. But these are the real things that we heard. And those were the things that were getting in the way of people actually changing their healthcare behaviors. And they were the things that the organization's benefit leaders didn't think they had the power to influence and change, because they could influence the benefit programs, but not the manager behaviors. And I think that's changing now in really good ways, where organizations are saying, hey, this is all connected. And COVID has definitely made well-being a much higher C-suite priority. So now I think the benefits team would have the power to say, hey, we've got to change those manager behaviors because they're being jerks. And that's what's impacting the health of our employees.
So often I see these profound disconnects between the way of life, the way of doing business, and the programs that are offered. And so to your point, so critical to get not only the top leaders involved in terms of setting the tone across the organization and enacting policies such as allowing people a longer break than 10 minutes for lunch, but also the key role that those managers play in really being those permission givers. And so often they really stand in the way of people engaging with their well-being, and they kind of make it not normal to engage with well-being and take advantage of those programs. So we've got a question coming in from Janice. Thanks so much. Janice asks, what is the best way to inspire leaders to change their culture, and how do you recommend they do that?
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think the best way is to look at similar companies that are maybe even competitors to you, or competitors that those leaders care about, and see what they're doing and where you can model. And a lot of energy goes into building the business case for well-being and proving ROI and all of that. But I really think it's mostly emotions that still convince leaders to make investments, and showing competitors, figuring out what makes those leaders tick, what they're going to care about most. And then, of course, talking to your people, because well-being is such a high priority for folks, whether they're joining a company, whether they're deciding to stay at a company. And so being able to show that impact on your people and how hard it's going to be to retain them without some of those changes, I think can be really effective.
You know, Jen, I talk a lot about the idea of how we not only need to make the kind of the logical business case where we show the numbers and we show the statistics, but we have to do a good job of telling the story, of making the emotional case. And I think your background is particularly well positioned for this, because as every advertiser knows, it is not the benefits of a product that sell it. It's the emotions that sell it. And so whether we're talking about a pharmaceutical company, they're selling, kind of the sexy life for selling a pharmaceutical that has nothing to do with the benefits of the pharmaceutical, but it's really making that emotional case. And certainly, I'm sure you must do a lot of that in the work that you all do.
Yeah, so much of our work is helping people see why the benefits actually support them in their life at that moment. And we talk a lot about meaningful moments and how do employers show up in those moments that really, really matter for people. And that's what benefits are all about. And you have to explain things to people in a really clear way that will connect with their lives. Too much of benefits communication and benefits marketing is programmatic driven. It's about talking about the technical features of benefits rather than the why this matters now. And if you make that change, it really makes a big, big impact on how people understand and appreciate the programs.
Why this matters now, and that meaningful moment. I think that's so powerful, Jen. And, I think about that MasterCard commercial that came out in the late 90s. And I show that in workshops sometimes. And you can literally see the whole room reciting priceless.
Right.
That moment, a time with 11-year-old son at a baseball game. So those meaningful moments, that's really the why behind it. All right, we got another question coming in from Lana. What advice do you have for organizations where the ultimate decision makers for worksite wellness do not have a true understanding of wellness and well-being? And hi, Lana. Thanks for that added note.
This is a great question. And I think it kind of touches on something that Laura and I wanted to talk about, which is really understanding your own privilege in the conversation of wellness. But I think where the decision makers just don't get it, it's okay. Like, it's okay that they don't fully understand well-being. It's okay that they don't understand the programs at the depth that you do. But what is going to make them believe that it's critical to the business? And there's so much great stuff out there right now with CEOs talking about why it's critical to the business, with proof that organizations that have people-centered cultures outperform others. I mean, there's plenty of evidence out there. So I think you have to get what matters most to those leaders and help them understand the business case, or the business side and the side that's going to connect to their priorities. don't worry as much about them understanding the nuts and bolts of every program you want to put in place. They don't need to become an expert in employee well-being to get on board with the investments that you want to make. So I think you can kind of balance those. But what I find is often leaders, the same leaders who are telling everyone to go back to the office because it's just no big deal to get to the office, and they've never really had to commute, have a bad commute or juggle childcare and all of these things. They're out of touch with the needs of their frontline employees, or they're out of touch with the realities of what it takes for people to be healthy and to actually do all of the things that they want to do to live their best life. So being able to illustrate that, and I think one of the best ways to illustrate that is to go talk to your people. And we've been doing a ton of online focus groups, and you can get so much data from people so quickly about what they care about, what gets in the way of them showing up for work every day. And I'll tell you what, that topic of what gets in the way of you showing up for work, leaders care about that. And I think we can kind of reframe a lot of well-being around that concept.
I love this idea of what gets in the way of you showing up for work. And, certainly we know that engagement has been a long time issue. And one of the things that I talk about a lot is that the Great Resignation is not underscoring anything new. People have always wanted flexibility. People have always wanted autonomy. People have always wanted to feel like that they matter. People have always wanted their well-being to be prioritized. The only difference is that now that it's an employee's market as opposed to an employer's market, that instead of showing up for work but not really, kind of checking out, coming to work but checking out, is that people actually have the power to actually vote with their feet. So Lana is saying a thank you for that response. Jen, I think that this is a perfect segue to our next question, which is around, you talked about that example of a company that had done, quote, all the right things.
Yeah.
And people were participating. And I'm assuming that's like they were participating in terms of doing the programs, filling out the health risk assessments. But meanwhile, the outside environment and culture wasn't supporting them. And so no real change actually happened. But what about an example of an organization that you've worked with that really has taken more of that outside in kind of approach and really has reaped the benefits from that?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you quickly a little bit about Splunk, who we've been working with for the last few years. Software company, really great company culture. They've talked they've talked externally a ton about what they've done for well-being. But during the pandemic, their leaders understood that this is a business imperative and they needed to solve for it right now. and they did. And they didn't just say to the benefits team, hey, figure out some well-being vendors and let's get them in here. They actually said, how do we get well-being into all aspects of our culture? And they integrated it not just in the HR programs, but in the way that they work and the way that leaders are evaluated and the programs that they have. They focus on resilience and mental health and being able to have reasonable work schedules and work days and flexibility and so forth. And all of that is interconnected. And they've been super, super successful. They've done a great job. They have a world-class program now. And it's not just what we would typically think of as a benefits and well-being program. It's really in all aspects of the organization and all of the ways that they actually operate.
And so it's become more of a way of life as opposed to a standalone program.
Yep.
And I think that this really ties to this idea of, questioning this prevailing narrative around personal responsibility. So we see this messaging all the time. Better health and well-being, it's easy. All you have to do is take more personal responsibility for your health and well-being. So what are the unintended consequences of that, Jen?
Yeah. Well, I think the personal responsibility narrative has been a little bit of a lazy approach to well-being, and it kind of takes a lot of the responsibility off of the people who have the most power. And I mean, I think it's changing. I think we're starting to see a shift. Just like at one point in the industry, we said, oh, consumer-driven health plans are going to save healthcare. They're going to put more control on individuals who are using healthcare, and they're going to help drive down prices. Well, that hasn't worked. And I'm a big fan of HSAs for their tax benefits, but the consumer-driven plans have not done what they were promised to do, which was lower costs by having an empowered consumer base. So I think we're seeing this similar thing with our understanding of well-being. We can't say, okay, here are all these programs and you've got to take advantage of it. We have to look at the systemic and the cultural and the economic factors that are at play. And we have to look at that through the lens of everything about how our systems work. Who is advantaged and who's disadvantaged in the various systems that support health and well-being, whether it's physical, emotional, or financial well-being. All of that's interconnected, and we have to look at all of it. And you can't pull them apart, and you can't discount how hard it is to actually be healthy and how much time and money it takes.
I just that right there, Jen, we cannot discount just how hard it is to be healthy. I think it's so critical. We look at these places like blue zones and kind of marvel at how healthy people are, how they're not just surviving, but thriving into their hundreds. And it's not because they're that much motivated or that much more aware or that much, quote, empowered than the rest of us. It's just that they happen to have been lucky enough to have been born into a blue zone where it's just easy and normal to engage with your health and well-being, which I think that this is really a perfect segue into this discussion about wellness privilege, which you started to bring up, which is, very briefly what it is kind of a take on privilege, which is unearned benefits that some groups and individuals experience and others don't. And so therefore one's experience is really shaped by that in the workplace and every other place that we show up, and how much that ties to well-being. So easy enough for us as industry people to issue these tips like, get healthier by getting out into nature, get healthier by eating whole foods or coming to work as your full authentic self. We know that every single one of those tips actually invokes a whole host of assumptions around wellness privilege.
Yeah. And we have to remember that the systems are not set up for people to succeed automatically. And there's a lot of factors that go into whether or not someone can take advantage of their, whether it's wellness benefits or has access to good healthcare and so forth. And just a couple personal stories on that. For anyone watching, you can see I'm a white woman. I am college educated. I have spent my whole career in the health and benefits space, and I still have such a hard time navigating the healthcare system. It is so complicated. Doctors are really difficult at times, and it takes a tremendous amount of time and energy to just navigate the healthcare system in a way that's going to support an individual's health. And then when it comes to actually being healthy, to have the resources to do that. And I don't have the racial bias working against me. I have a lot of factors that are not working against me, but it's still hard to navigate healthcare, and it takes a ton of time and energy to be well and to be healthy in all the ways that we want people to be healthy. And a quick story on that. Like many people, I gained about 15 pounds over the last 2 years during COVID. Not moving as much, eating more than I needed to, because what else was there to do other than stress out? And earlier this spring, I said, okay, I've got to lose that 15 pounds. So what did I do? I have all these resources. I talked to my naturopath. I got a nutrition coach. I started working out more. I spent an insane amount of money on groceries, and I lost that 15 pounds. But if you think about all of the privilege that I have to be able to do that, it's insurmountable to the average American. And then we put these expectations on people, like, well, why aren't you able to be at a healthy weight? Why aren't you able to sleep well? Like, we have all of these tools for you. why on earth could that possibly not be achievable? So there's just a big disconnect there that we have to figure out how to unwind.
And I think that, it can make the situation worse, because then people start to feel badly about themselves, feeling
Right.
like it's my fault that I'm not healthier. And
Mhm.
because it is, this perception, oh, okay, so it's all about my personal
Yeah.
responsibility, when instead we're really masking some of those other issues that are at hand. So I
Mhm.
want to pause for a question that Jill asked here. With employers pushing numerous great mental and behavioral health programs to employees and their families, what types of communication approaches have you seen that have been effective in promoting these programs? Thanks.
Yeah, there's no one type of communication. And hi, Jill, it's nice to see you. There's no one type of communication that is the end all and be all for every organization. It's a little bit different for every organization in terms of how to reach people. But what is effective in terms of the messages are engaging managers and leaders so that they actually know these are a priority, helping them know where to push people for more resources. We don't expect them to be employee benefits experts, but when they pick up on something, they should know where to send people. And then really being clear about which program is relevant for what type of issue. And with many of our clients, they now have an explosion of health and well-being benefits, and people very quickly get overwhelmed with which one do I go to for what type of care, and how do I know where to start? And people will get very discouraged if they put time going down one path and it's not the right one. So making that really, really simple. And then the other thing is just saying it over and over and over again. As I said at the beginning, once you are just so tired of hearing about your mental health benefits and you feel like you have bored people to death because you've said it the same thing so many times, you're probably just starting to get everyone to understand what's out there. So you have to be willing to really say it over and over and over again.
So say it. And say it again.
Yeah.
And it also seems like, Jen, that with this, particularly with these managers and leaders, like you need to give them a zinger, a one-liner that really rings for them. We worked with Schindler Elevator Corporation, for example, and build a winning team. That was something that really seemed to resonate. So any kind of one-liners that you've used?
I don't know if there's a one-liner, but I would say you have to give managers and leaders permission to talk about mental health. And just a few years ago, a lot of HR organizations might have said, "Oh, no, don't talk to your people about mental health. Send them to an HR business partner or send them to the EAP. We don't want managers talking about our mental health programs." And I think that's very, very different. That has really, really shifted. And a lot of our clients are training their managers on how to talk about mental health and how to actually have conversations where if someone says, "I'm overwhelmed, I'm stressed, I'm anxious, I'm not able to keep up," how do you actually have a productive conversation and get them support and help them get to the right resources that are going to help? As managers are so close to the individual employees, they should be a communication channel.
Yeah, Jim Harder with Gallup spoke about that a lot, about how managers are really on the front line and really have to be playing that role now.
Yep.
So, Jen, can you give us top 3 takeaways for our listeners on what to do going forward?
Yeah, so I think my top 3 takeaways, just in this whole topic of how to get people engaged in well-being and think about well-being is first, you have to understand your people fully, not just their work lives, but their personal situations. And the more you understand that, the better you can do at solving and helping them take advantage of the programs that are out there. The second thing is to do a check on your own privilege when you're designing programs or solutions. Are you projecting an expectation on people that's based on your situation that's not realistic for others? And I think sometimes we can do that so quickly. It's not even conscious, but really think about your own privilege. And then if all else fails, just talk to your people, do focus groups, do interviews, go out to the sites, talk to everyone, figure out what they need, And that's always illuminating and will help you be more effective in your programs in so many ways.
You know, Jen, I think all three of your tips here about, really understanding people and checking your own wellness privilege and then asking people is really about understanding not just people as individuals, but understanding them in terms of the context within which they operate, which really ties to our theme of how much we really are creatures of culture and not just creatures of habit.
Absolutely.
So Jen, can you share with us about what's the best way to stay in touch? And I know that AJ has written this in the chat, but go ahead and share with us the best way to keep in touch with you.
Yeah, AJ just put it in the chat. You can find me on LinkedIn. And then our website, segalbenz.com, has a ton of resources. We have hundreds of blog posts on different topics. We have lots of webinars that you can review and different resources around all aspects of benefits and well-being communication. And please reach out. Always happy to chat anytime.
And I want to add, Jen, I got to hear you moderate a session at the National Business Group on Health Business Group on Health conference, and you are an extraordinary speaker and moderator. I know also that Segal Benz has a monthly newsletter that's a great resource. So I encourage all of you all to subscribe to that. And Jen, I want to thank you so much for being our guest today. You're such an incredible resource. So this month, again, we were talking about this idea of creatures of culture. Next month, we're going to be taking more of a deep dive into this idea that we brought up in our discussion today around the key role that managers play and how to engage those managers. And the month after that, which is in August, our guest will be Jen Fisher, who's the Chief Wellness Officer with Deloitte. And we're going to be talking about kind of how we're all living in this always on environment and how do we respond to that. So again, Jen, thank you so much for being an amazing guest today. And again, I really encourage everyone to follow your work and to stay in touch and to take advantage of the resources that you all have. I want to say thank you so much to everybody who showed up today, and we will see you next month, fourth Wednesday at the same time. Take care. Thanks again.
Thanks, Laura.